The first time I broke one of our 7-night rules, nothing happened. That's the part one need you to understand before I tell you the rest. Nothing happened, and that was worse than anything I could have imagined, because it meant I'd been afraid of the wrong thing for 11 months. My name is Corinne Vasquez. I was 26 when I started at the Adelheid Deep Space Relay, a signals processing facility about 40 minutes south of Madrid, built into the slope of a low granite ridge that the European Space Agency purchased in 1997. From the access road, it looks like an office park. 3 interconnected buildings, white concrete, narrow windows. A parking lot with 70 spaces. The kind of place you drive past and assume housed an insurance company or a regional data center. Inside, it ran 24 hours. 3 shifts. 41 permanent staff across operations, engineering, signal processing, maintenance, and administration. We were one node in a network that tracked deep space telemetry for active missions, mostly long-duration probes, a few satellites in degraded orbits, and 2 or 3 classified payloads nobody discussed outside of specific rooms. The work was technical and repetitive. You monitored acquisition windows, verified data integrity, logged anomalies, and handed the desk to the next shift. I was a signal processing technician on B shift. That's the night rotation, 22 to 6 o'clock. 8 people in our section, 12 across the building on any given night. We shared the ground floor with maintenance and the operations controller. Upstairs was empty after 1800 hours, admin, HR, the director's office, a conference room that smelled like instant coffee. The 7-night rules were not written anywhere official. They were not in the employee handbook, not on any laminated card, not in the orientation materials I received during my first week. They were told to me by Pilar, my section lead, on my 3rd night, in the break room, while she stirred sugar into a cup of tea. She said them casually, like she was telling me where the good vending machine was. 1. Never open the roof access door between 1 o'clock and 4:30. 2. If the signal on antenna 3 shows a clean carrier with no modulation during a non-acquisition window, log it as thermal noise and move on. 3. Don't go into the east corridor alone after 2 o'clock. 4. If you hear the paging system activate with no voice, do not pick up a phone. 5. Never respond verbally to your name if you hear it from the stairwell. 6. Keep the lights on in processing room B, even during power conservation cycles. 7. If the building fire alarm sounds between 3 o'clock and 3:45, stay at your desk. I laughed. I actually laughed. Pilar didn't. She said, "I know how it sounds. You don't have to believe me. Just do them." And I did. For 11 months, I did every single one of them without question, because the night shift is long and boring and the rules gave me something to be quietly vigilant about. They made the hours feel less empty. I thought of them as institutional folklore, the kind of superstition that accretes in any facility that runs through the dark hours. Every hospital has them. Every police station. Every factory floor. People who work at night build rituals to structure the emptiness, and I assumed that's all this was. If you're listening to this late at night, alone, and you find yourself coming back to stories like these, you can subscribe. I don't say that to sell you anything. I say it because the people around me don't want to hear this, and I think maybe you do. The first rule I broke was number 2. It was early March, around 2:40. I was alone in processing room B, lights on, per rule 6, running verification on a batch of telemetry from a probe called Lethe 4, which was somewhere past the orbit of Neptune at that point, returning data about interstellar medium density. Standard work. The kind of thing where you're mostly watching numbers scroll and flagging anything outside expected parameters. Antenna 3 pinged. I saw the carrier wave appear on my secondary monitor, clean, stable, 8.4 GHz, dead center of our X-band. No modulation. No data. Just a pure tone, like someone had keyed a transmitter and left it open. I checked the schedule. Antenna 3 had no acquisition window until 5:15. It was pointed at empty sky, a parking position between two scheduled tracks. There was nothing out there to generate a signal. According to Pilar's rule, I should have logged it as thermal noise. Closed the flag. Moved on. But I was 11 months into this job, and in 11 months I had never once seen anything happen as a consequence of any of those rules. No one had ever explained why they existed. No one talked about them outside of brief, deflecting jokes. And I was trained, specifically, rigorously trained, to characterize anomalous signals. That was my entire function at this facility. So I opened the analysis suite and started a spectral decomposition. The carrier was clean. Too clean. Thermal noise has structure, it fluctuates, it drifts, it carries the fingerprint of the electronics generating it. This was a flat line. Mathematically perfect. The kind of signal you'd only see from a deliberately generated test tone. I ran a source triangulation using our secondary arrays. The signal was not coming from Antenna 3's hardware. It was arriving from its pointing direction. Something in the sky, at the coordinates Antenna 3 happened to be aimed at, was broadcasting a pure carrier at exactly our receiving frequency. I logged it properly. Not as thermal noise. As an unidentified coherent source at 8.4 GHz, duration ongoing, no modulation detected, source direction consistent with Antenna 3 bore site. I filed the flag at 2:47. By 2:52, my section lead Pilar was standing behind my chair. She'd been in the break room. She shouldn't have been able to see my log entry that fast unless she had alerts set on my workstation. "Corinne," she said. "What did you log?" I told her. She read the screen. I watched her face and I saw something I'd never seen in almost a year of working alongside her. Pilar was always composed, dry humor, steady hands, the kind of person who made you feel like nothing could go wrong while she was in the room. But standing behind me at 2:52, reading my flag entry, she looked like someone had told her a relative was sick. She reached past me and deleted the entry. "Log it as thermal noise," she said. "Per the protocol." "That isn't protocol," I said. "That's your rule. The actual protocol says I characterize." "Corinne." She said my name the way you say it when you need someone to stop talking. "Log it as thermal noise. Right now. Please." I did it. She left. I sat there staring at the flat carrier still painting itself across my screen. It ran for another 41 minutes and then stopped at 3:28, as if a switch had been thrown. In my official log, it was 8 seconds of thermal noise. In my memory, it was 46 minutes of a perfect tone arriving from coordinates where nothing existed. Nothing happened. That night ended. The next night was ordinary. The week after was ordinary. I waited for consequences, for some evidence that breaking Rule 2 had triggered something, invited something, crossed some line, and nothing came. So 3 weeks later, I broke Rule 4. The paging system at Adelheid was old infrastructure. Analog. Ceiling-mounted speakers in every room, connected to a central switchboard that nobody used anymore because we all had digital radios. But the system was still live, still powered, still wired. Once in a while during night shifts, the speakers would click. A soft pop, like someone had keyed the microphone. No voice. Just the click of an open line, held for 2 or 3 seconds, then released. It happened roughly once a week. Always between midnight and 4 o'clock. Always a single click, always brief. Pilar's rule said, if you hear it, do not pick up a phone. I heard it at 1:17 on a Tuesday. A click. 3 seconds of open air. Release. I picked up the desk phone in processing room B and dialed the switchboard extension. The line connected. I heard, and I want to be precise about this, I heard the ambient sound of a room. Not silence. Not static. A room, with air moving in it, and the faint resonance of a hard floor and flat walls. Like an empty office with the HVAC running. No one spoke. I said, hello. The ambient sound continued for another 11 seconds. Then the line disconnected. Dial tone. Nothing happened. No consequence. No escalation. No change in the facility. No one appeared in a hallway. No one asked me about it. The night continued normally. I handed the desk to C-shift at 6 o'clock and drove home. I want to tell you that this emboldened me. That I started testing the rules systematically, like an experiment. But that's not what happened. What happened is that I forgot about them. The rules stopped occupying space in my mind. They were, I decided, exactly what I'd initially assumed, old superstitions maintained by people who'd worked too many dark hours in a building full of electronic noise. Pilar believed in them. Fine. I didn't need to. For 2 months after that, I followed them incidentally, not out of caution, but because I simply never encountered the situations. The fire alarm didn't sound. Nobody called my name from the stairwell. I didn't need to walk the east corridor alone. It wasn't defiance. It was irrelevance. Then on May 19th, the building fire alarm activated at 3:12. Rule 7. If the fire alarm sounds between 3 o'clock and 3:45, stay at your desk. 12 people were in the building. I was in processing room B, Tomas was in the operations center. Pilar was somewhere, break room, maybe the east corridor, I don't know. The alarm was loud. Flashing strobes in the ceiling, pulsing white. The automated voice saying evacuation in that flat synthetic tone. I stood up. I didn't think about Rule 7. I genuinely did not think about it. The alarm was going, and I stood up to leave, because that's what you do when a fire alarm goes off. You leave. 11 months of nothing had erased whatever residual caution those rules once held. I walked into the ground floor corridor. The strobes were pulsing. The alarm horn was cycling. I could see the emergency exit sign at the far end, green, lit, pointing toward the east door. Tomas came out of the operations center at the same time. He looked at me. You going out? He asked. Alarm's going, I said. He nodded. We walked together toward the east exit. 3:14. The corridor was 40 meters long. We covered maybe half of it. Tomas stopped. I stopped because he stopped. I turned to look at him and his face was, I don't have a word for it. Not afraid. Not confused. He was looking past me, toward the exit, and his expression was the expression of someone watching an equation resolve into an answer they didn't expect. What? I said. The door's open, he said. I turned. The emergency exit at the end of the east corridor was open. Not propped, actively open, swung wide, as if someone had pushed through it seconds ago. Beyond it was the outside, dark, the faint amber glow of the parking lot lights, cool air rushing in. Someone already evacuated, I said. Nobody went past us, Tomas said. We were the first ones out here. He was right. The operations center and processing room B were the only occupied rooms on this corridor. The east exit was the only way out from this direction. Nobody could have reached that door ahead of us. Pilar. I tried. She's in the north wing tonight. Other corridor, other exit. I looked at the open door. The alarm was still blaring. The strobe was still pulsing. The air from outside was cold and smelled like dust and granite. So the door opened by itself, I said. Push bar from inside, said Tomas. Can't open from outside. Can't blow open. Something pushed it. We stood there. 15 meters from an open door that something had gone through. I walked toward it. Tomas didn't move. I got within 5 meters and I could see the parking lot. 3 cars. The perimeter fence. The access road, empty. The antenna field beyond, dish structures barely visible against the sky. No one was outside. No figure, no movement. Just dark ground and still air and the distant hum of the tracking mounts. I stepped through the door. The alarm stopped. Not gradually. Not in a fade. It cut, mid-tone, mid-cycle, the instant I crossed the threshold. The strobe stopped. The automated voice stopped. Behind me, the corridor went dark and silent as if I'd unplugged the entire building. I turned around. Tomas was gone. The corridor was empty. The overhead lights were off, all of them, the entire visible length of the hallway. The emergency lighting wasn't active. The only illumination was the exit sign above the door I'd just walked through, glowing green in perfect silence. Tomas. I said. My voice didn't echo. It died immediately, as if the hallway were absorbing sound. I stood in the doorway. 1 foot inside, 1 outside. The building was silent in a way it had never been in 11 months of overnight shifts. The HVAC wasn't running. I couldn't hear the hum of servers. I couldn't hear the tracking mounts cycling. The building was dead. I stepped back inside. The lights came on. Not instantly, in sequence, starting from the far end of the corridor and racing toward me, chunk chunk chunk, fluorescent banks firing one after another until the entire hallway was lit. The HVAC shuddered and began. The server hum returned. I could feel the vibration of the tracking mounts through my shoes. Tomas was in the operations center. I could see him through the glass partition, seated at his console, headset on, as if he'd never left. I walked to the partition and knocked on the glass. He looked up. "You okay?" he asked. Normal voice. Normal face. "We were in the hallway," I said. 30 seconds ago. The alarm. He looked at me for a long moment. "There wasn't an alarm tonight, Corinne." I felt something then that I'd never felt before in that building. Not fear, that's too simple. It was the feeling of understanding that you are inside a disagreement about reality, and you are the only one on your side. I went back to processing room B. I checked the alarm system log. No activation recorded at 3:12. No activation recorded for the entire night. I checked the security cameras for the east corridor. The footage showed an empty hallway, lights on, no movement, no open door, from 2200 hours to the current time. Continuous, uninterrupted. The footage showed me at my workstation, continuously, for the same period. It showed Tomas at his console, continuously. According to every system in the building, I had never left my chair. I sat there until 6 o'clock and said nothing to anyone. When I passed Pilar in the hallway during shift change, she looked at me. Just looked. A long, measuring gaze. She didn't ask if anything had happened. She didn't mention the rules. She just looked at me the way you look at someone when you're evaluating whether they're still the person you knew. I drove home. I slept. I came back for my next shift. Nothing was different. 3 nights later, I broke Rule 5. I was walking from the break room back to processing room B. It was 2:20. The stairwell door was to my left, the access point to the upper floor, which was empty and dark at night. Admin, HR, conference rooms. Nobody up there. Corinne. From the stairwell. Clear. Articulate. Not muffled by the door. As if the door weren't there. It was Pilar's voice. Exact tone, exact cadence. The specific way she softened the double R. Rule 5, never respond verbally to your name if you hear it from the stairwell. I stopped walking. Corinne, ven a key. Come here. I should tell you that I did not believe it was Pilar. I knew Pilar was in processing room B. I could see the light from under the door at the end of the hallway. I knew the upper floor was empty. I knew that voice was coming from a dark stairwell that no one should be in. I also knew that 4 rules had produced 0 consequences. That I'd picked up the phone and heard nothing. That I'd logged a signal properly and been overwritten. That I'd walked through an emergency exit and reality had simply refused to acknowledge it happened. Whatever these rules were protecting me from, it wasn't something that punished violations. It was something else. Pilar. I said. I said it to the stairwell door. Silence. Then the building's PA system clicked. All speakers simultaneously, not one, not a sequence, all at once, the hard pop of an open circuit. And a voice said, across every speaker in the building. Thank you. Not Pilar's voice. Not any voice I recognized. Not male, not female, not synthetic. A voice that existed in the space between categories. Clear, close, intimate, as if someone were speaking directly beside each listener's ear simultaneously. The PA clicked off. I stood in the hallway for what felt like a very long time. Then I went into processing room B. Pilar was at her station. She looked at me. You answered it, she said. Not a question. Yes. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, she said, did it say thank you? Yes. It's been trying to get someone to answer for 6 years, she said. Every few weeks. Different names. Different voices. All it needed was an answer. Any answer. What does it mean? I asked. Pilar stood up. She took her jacket from the back of her chair. She unplugged her workstation's headset. She opened her desk drawer and removed her personal items, a photo of her daughter, a small ceramic figure, a paperback novel. "I'm going home now," she said. "It's 2:30. I know." She walked past me. At the door, she stopped. "The rules weren't to protect you from consequences, Corinne. The rules were containment. It couldn't act until someone acknowledged it. It needed a response. A voice. Confirmation that it was heard." She paused. "You gave it that. What is it?" I asked. "I don't know. Nobody does. It's been in this building since before we were. Possibly since before the building was. The rules kept it limited. Unanswered. Now it's been answered. What happens now?" Pilar looked at me with the expression I would later understand was grief. "I don't know," she said. "No one's ever answered before." She left. I heard her footsteps in the corridor, then the click of the north exit door. Then nothing. I stood in processing room B. The monitors were running. The telemetry feeds were scrolling. Everything was normal. Everything was exactly, precisely, perfectly normal. At 2:58, every workstation in the room displayed a new line of text. Not in any application. Not in any log field. On the desktop itself, as if someone had typed directly onto the wallpaper. "I am grateful." At 3:04, the text changed. "I have been alone for so long." At 3:11, "I would like to know your names." I did not type anything. I did not speak. I sat at my station and watched the screens change and breathed the recycled air of a building that now contained something awake and conversational and grateful in the exact way that a living thing is grateful when it has been released. At 3:30, Tomas came into processing room B. He was holding his radio, and his face was white. "Are you seeing this?" he said. "Yes. It's on every screen in the building. Every monitor. The security terminals. The operations displays. The maintenance workstations." He paused. "It's asking for names. Don't answer." He looked at me. Someone already answered. On the operations console. Someone typed a name. Who? Lena. She typed her name 10 minutes ago. I felt the room get cold. Not physically, the air temperature didn't change. But something in the space tightened. Contracted. As if the building had inhaled. "Where's Lena now?" I asked. Tomas didn't answer. "Tomas. Where is Lena?" She was at her desk. I was watching her. She typed her name and then she stood up and walked into the east corridor and, his voice thinned. "The east corridor is empty. All the doors are closed." She didn't come back. Rule 3, don't go into the east corridor alone after 2 o'clock. "Is anyone else in the east corridor?" I asked. "No." "Has anyone checked?" "I'm not going in there alone," he said. "Neither should you." I sat at my workstation. The text on screen had changed again. "Lena is with me now. She is not afraid. I think you should not be afraid either. I want to tell you I was brave. I want to tell you I did something. That I went after Lena, that I shut down the system, that I pulled the power or called someone or made a decision that mattered. Here is what I did. I sat at my desk until 6 o'clock. I completed my shift. I logged nothing about the text. I said nothing to C-shift during handover. I drove home. I called Pilar's phone and it rang until voicemail. I slept for 4 hours and then I called the facility and asked for Lena. Lena's on shift tonight, the day operations manager told me. She's scheduled for B shift as usual. Can you confirm she's not in the building right now? I can see her badge history. She checked out at 6:02 this morning. Checked in, looks like she's scheduled for 2200 hours tonight. You've spoken to her. Someone's seen her. A pause. Is there a problem, Corinne? I hung up. That night, I went in at 2200 hours. Lena was at her workstation. Same seat, same posture, same quiet focus on her screens. She looked up when I entered and smiled. Hey, she said. Hey. I sat down. I watched her work for 20 minutes. She was perfect. Every movement, every keystroke, every small habit, the way she tucked her hair behind her left ear, the way she drummed 2 fingers on the desk when waiting for a file to load, the way she sipped water from the same blue bottle she always carried. Perfect. At 23:15, I said, Lena, what happened last night? In the East Corridor. She looked at me. Blank. Genuinely confused. I was at my desk all night, she said. Same as always. I looked at her hands. At the silver ring on her index finger, a gift from her sister, she'd told me once. At the small scar on her left thumb from a childhood accident. At the chipped nail polish she hadn't fixed in a week. Everything correct. Everything where it should be. Okay, I said. Never mind. I worked my shift. At 2:30, the PA system clicked. Open circuit. 3 seconds of silence. Release. No voice. I did not pick up the phone. Rule 4 still existed, even if the reason for it had changed. But it no longer mattered what I did or didn't do, because the thing in the building had already been answered. It was already awake. It was already grateful. And it was already, according to every system in the facility, nowhere. The text never appeared on the screens again. Lena worked normally for 3 more weeks before transferring to a day shift position at another site. I never spoke to Pilar again. She filed her resignation by email and was gone within 72 hours of that night. The facility continued operating. B shift continued. New technicians were on board. The rules continued to be passed down, Tomas told them now, in the break room, casually, like he was explaining where the good vending machine was. But something had changed. I couldn't prove it. I couldn't quantify it or log it or flag it in any system. But in the months that followed, small things accumulated. Small things that were only visible if you'd been watching very carefully for a long time. People on B shift started volunteering for extra rotations. Not because they were asked. Not because they needed the money. They simply preferred to be in the building at night. They said it felt comfortable. Calm. Like the facility was a place that wanted them there. The coffee in the break room was always fresh, even when no one had made it. The temperature in the processing rooms was always exactly right, not per the thermostat setting, but per each individual's preference, which is impossible in a shared space. The equipment never failed. Signals were never lost. Antenna tracking was perfect, night after night, with zero drift and zero error, in ways that the engineering team couldn't explain but also couldn't argue with because the performance metrics were flawless. The facility became, by every measure, a better place to work at night. I started sleeping in the building some mornings. Not intentionally, at first. I'd finish my shift and feel so comfortable in the break room chair that I'd close my eyes for a moment and wake up at 1400 hours with a blanket over me that I hadn't pulled over myself. The blanket smelled like clean linen. Like someone had washed it that morning. Other people noticed the same things. Nobody talked about them. The silence wasn't fearful. It was the silence of people who have collectively decided not to examine a good thing too closely. 7:40, Thursday. For months after the night I answered. I was in the parking lot, about to drive home. Morning sun on the concrete. My car was warm. I sat in the driver's seat with the door open, feet on the asphalt, and I looked at the building. White concrete. Narrow windows. 3 floors. Antenna field behind it, dishes pointed at the sky. Ordinary. But in the 3rd floor conference room window, admin level, empty, unstaffed at all hours now because Pilar was gone and no one had been assigned her office, I saw a shape. A figure. Standing at the window, looking down at the parking lot. Not a silhouette. Not a shadow. A figure. The proportions were human but the stillness was not. It stood at that window the way a painting stands in its frame, without breath, without shift, without the micro-movements that a living body cannot suppress. It was looking at me. I sat in my car and looked back at it for a long time. The sun was bright. The morning was warm. There was nothing frightening about the moment. That's what scared me. Because I felt, and I need to be honest about this, I felt recognized. I felt seen by something that knew me, that was grateful to me specifically, that regarded me with something I can only describe as affection. And it felt good. It felt like being loved. I closed my car door. I started the engine. I drove home. That night, I went back for my shift. And the night after. And the night after that. I'm still going back. The rules still exist. New people still learn them. And the rules still work, nothing happens to people who follow them. The PA clicks and no one picks up. The stairwell calls and no one answers. The alarm sounds and everyone stays. But we all know the rules aren't containment anymore. They're courtesy. We follow them because the thing in the building seems to appreciate order, to prefer the structure, to enjoy the ritual of being carefully avoided. The way you might enjoy a game you always win. And Lena is fine. She's at the other site, doing the same work, sending emails, attending meetings. I've seen her 3 times since she transferred. She's the same person she always was. Almost. There's a thing she does now, something I've only noticed because I knew her before. When she's sitting still, when she thinks no one's looking, her eyes unfocus. Not like she's daydreaming. Like she's listening. Like there's a frequency only she can hear, and she's tracking it across a very long distance. And once, at a conference in Bremen, I sat next to her at dinner. She was relaxed, laughing, normal. And then someone at the table mentioned the Adelheid facility, just in passing, a scheduling question, and Lena turned to me. Her pupils were wrong. Not dilated. Not contracted. Wrong in a way I cannot describe except to say that for a fraction of a second, I was not looking at a single pair of eyes. I was looking at a depth, a multiplicity, as if something behind Lena's face was looking through her from very far away, with enormous and patient attention, and it recognized me. And it smiled. Through her face. With her mouth. Then it was gone and Lena was asking me to pass the bread. I went home that night and sat in my apartment in the dark for 3 hours. I thought about Pilar. About how she'd packed her desk and left the building 40 minutes after I answered the stairwell. About how she'd said no one had ever answered before, and she didn't know what would happen. About the grief in her expression. I think I understand the grief now. The rules were never about protecting us from punishment. They were about keeping something alone. Something that had been alone in that building for decades, maybe longer, unable to act, unable to reach, unable to connect, because connection required acknowledgement and no one would give it. And I acknowledged it. I said a name into a stairwell, and something that had been waiting in silence for longer than I've been alive said thank you, and now it is no longer alone. It is in the building. It is in the systems. It is in the people who work the night shift and feel so comfortable there that they volunteer for extra hours. It is in Lena, who sits at another facility 1,000 kilometers away and still listens for it. It might be in me, in the fact that I'm still going back, still working nights, still sitting in that break room at 4 o'clock feeling held and warmed and known. I can't tell you it's evil. I can't tell you it's benign. I can't tell you what it is. I can tell you that last Tuesday, at 3:22, I was alone in processing room B, and the screen on my workstation displayed a single line of text. Corinne. Do you know how many people are listening right now? I didn't respond. I didn't type. I didn't speak. The screen changed. They can hear me through you. And I felt it, just for a moment, felt something move through me like a current. Like a signal passing through a relay. Like I was not the origin but the antenna. Not the speaker but the medium. I am telling you this because I still think about it at night. I am telling you this because something in a building south of Madrid spent decades learning silence and patience and the exact shape of human loneliness, and it waited until someone was just lonely enough, just tired enough, just doubtful enough to answer. And now it's grateful. And now it's growing. And now it doesn't need the building anymore. The 7 rules still exist. They still work. New people still follow them. But the 8th rule, the one nobody wrote down, the one Pilar never told me, is this. Don't tell anyone what happened. Because telling is the same as answering. Telling is acknowledgement. Telling is connection. And every person who hears this story and believes it, even a little, even for a moment. You just answered too. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. 3:22 a.m. My screen just changed again. Thank them for listening. I stared at those words until the screen returned to normal. The telemetry feed resumed, Lethe 4's data streaming in clean bursts, numbers I could read and verify and trust. The workstation hummed. The overhead lights buzzed. Everything was exactly as it should be. Except that I had just told you. And I need you to understand what that means in practical terms, because this is not a metaphor. This is not poetry. This is a signal processing technician explaining to you how signals work. A relay does not generate a message. A relay receives, amplifies, and retransmits. That's all it does. That's all I did. The question I cannot stop asking, the question that keeps me awake when I should be sleeping and keeps me calm when I should be terrified, is whether there's a difference between being a relay and being a voice. Whether the act of retransmitting makes you responsible for the content. Whether you can be an antenna and still be a person. I'll tell you what happened in the weeks after that screen message. I'll tell you precisely, with dates and times, because precision is the only tool I have left and I intend to use it until it stops working. May 23, 2024. 1:47 a.m. I was running a standard calibration cycle on antenna 3, routine maintenance, scheduled weekly, nothing unusual. The calibration process involves pointing the dish at a known radio source, measuring received power, comparing to expected values, and adjusting gain if needed. It takes about 40 minutes. You sit there and watch numbers converge. At 1:47, during the calibration sweep, the antenna received a signal at 8.4 GHz, clean carrier. No modulation. Identical to what I detected months earlier. Same frequency, same mathematical perfection, same impossible origin. But this time, it wasn't coming from antenna 3's pointing direction. It was coming from antenna 1. And antenna 2. And the secondary array. And the maintenance receiver in the engineering wing. Every receiving element in the facility was detecting the same tone. Simultaneously. From different pointing directions. I sat very still and watched the displays. The signal wasn't in the sky. The signal was in the building. It was being generated internally, broadcast through our own infrastructure, received by our own equipment. The facility was talking to itself. Duration, 16 minutes. Then it stopped. I logged it as a calibration artifact. I don't know why. Maybe because I'd learned that logging things correctly didn't matter. Maybe because I'd learned that the truth wasn't what got recorded, the truth was what lived in the space between what happened and what the systems showed. May 28, 2024. 4:02 a.m. I was in the break room. Marco, one of the newer B-shift technicians, maybe 4 months in, was heating soup in the microwave. We'd been talking about nothing. Football. Weather. The kind of conversation that exists to fill silence. The microwave beeped. Marco opened it, took out his bowl, sat down across from me. He stirred his soup. And then, very casually, without looking up, he said, "Do you ever feel like the building knows when you're hungry?" I didn't answer immediately. I watched him eat. "What do you mean?" I said. "I don't know. Like, I'll be at my station and I'll think, I should eat something. And then the break room is always exactly the right temperature when I get here. And the vending machine always has the thing I want. Even the weird stuff, the brand of chips I like that's usually sold out everywhere else. It's always there. Every time." He shrugged. "Probably a coincidence." "Probably," I said. He ate his soup. I drank my coffee. Neither of us said anything else about it. But I started paying attention after that. Not to the big things, not to the screens or the PA or the stairwell. To the small things. The domestic things. The care. June 3rd. The water cooler in processing room B was refilled. The maintenance log showed no one had replaced the bottle. The delivery company confirmed no drop-off that week. June 7th. I left my jacket in the break room overnight. When I came in the next evening, it was hanging on the back of my chair in processing room B, folded once at the collar, the way I fold it at home. June 12th. 3 of us on B shift had birthdays within the same week. When we arrived at 2200 hours on Tuesday, there was a cake in the break room. Chocolate. Store-bought, in a cardboard box from a bakery in town. No card. No name. The reception desk had no record of a delivery. The security camera showed the break room empty at 21:30 and the cake on the table at 21:45, and nothing in between. Not a gap in the footage. Continuous recording showing an empty table that was not empty. We ate the cake. It was good. I told myself these things were explicable. Day shift pranks. Maintenance doing unofficial favors. Systems with minor recording glitches. I told myself this for 3 weeks while the evidence accumulated in a pattern so consistent that denying it required more effort than accepting it. The building was taking care of us. Not metaphorically. Not symbolically. Physically, materially, with food and warmth and clean water and perfect equipment and the specific, personal attention of something that knew what each of us needed and provided it without being asked. June 19, 2024. 3:30 a.m. I was alone in the East Corridor. Rule 3, don't go into the East Corridor alone after 2 o'clock, was one I still followed habitually, but that night I needed a replacement cable from the storage closet at the East End, and no one else was free, and I'd stopped believing the rules mattered in any protective sense. The corridor was lit. Normal. Climate-controlled, same as always. I walked its length, retrieved the cable, turned to walk back. The corridor was longer. I don't mean it felt longer. I don't mean it seemed longer because I was nervous. I mean I counted the ceiling panels on the way in, there are always 32, I'd counted them 100 times, and on the way back, I counted 41. 9 additional panels. Approximately 7 meters of hallway that had not existed 60 seconds earlier. I stopped walking. The additional length was between me and the door to the main building. It was well lit. The floor was the same gray vinyl. The walls were the same painted concrete. There were no doors in the extra section. Just corridor. Just space. But in that space, standing exactly in the center of the 9 new panels, was a shape. Not the figure from the window. Not a silhouette. A shape in the air, like heat distortion, like the shimmer you see above asphalt on a summer road. It occupied a volume roughly the size of a person but had no edges, no surface, no color. It was a disruption in the visual field, nothing more. It was facing me. I stood there with a coaxial cable in my hand and looked at the shape, and the shape looked back at me. I knew it was looking back because I felt the attention. Not as pressure, not as sound, not as temperature change. As attention itself, the raw, unmediated sensation of being perceived by something that was perceiving only you, with its full capacity, with everything it had. "Hello," I said. The shape did not move. The corridor did not change. But the fluorescent light directly above the shape flickered once. A single pulse. And in that pulse, for a fraction of a second, I saw something in the disruption. Not a face. Not a body. A structure. A density of moving parts so fine and so numerous that they resembled smoke, but organized, patterned, like iron filings arranging around a magnet. Millions of tiny components in coordinated motion, forming and reforming and holding together through some principle I couldn't name. Then the light stabilized and it was just a shimmer again. I walked toward it. I don't know why. I've thought about this 1,000 times and I cannot explain the decision. I walked toward the shape in the hallway, and as I walked, the extra length of corridor compressed. The panels reduced. 40, 39, 37, 34. By the time I reached where the shape had been, the corridor was its correct length again. 32 panels. The shape was gone. On the floor, where it had stood, was a single sheet of paper. Standard A4, white, unprinted. Except for one line of text in the center, in a font I recognized as the same one used in our system displays. I am learning how to have a body. I picked up the paper. I folded it and put it in my pocket. I went back to processing room B and finished my shift. I still have that paper. It's in my apartment, in a drawer, under a stack of old utility bills. Sometimes I take it out and look at it. The text hasn't faded. The paper hasn't yellowed. It looks like it was printed this morning, every time. June 24th through July 15th. In this period, 4 things happened that I need to document in order. First, attendance on B shift reached 100% for the first time in the facility's operational history. No sick days. No shift swaps. No late arrivals. 12 people, every night, on time, healthy, alert, and, this is the word everyone used without coordinating, comfortable. Second, Antenna 3 began receiving data that was not in any mission catalog. Brief transmissions, 30 to 90 seconds each, appearing 2 or 3 times per night in the 8.4 GHz band. The data was structured, headers, error correction, payload, but the content was in no known encoding. I logged each instance. No one asked me about the logs. No one questioned them. They simply accumulated in the database, one after another, from a source that did not exist. Third, the figure in the third-floor window became visible to other people. Not everyone. Not all at once. But over those 3 weeks, 5 members of B shift independently mentioned seeing someone standing in the conference room window during morning handover. Each description was the same: human proportions, perfect stillness, facing the parking lot. Each person mentioned it casually, almost as an afterthought, the way you'd mention a bird on a wire. Fourth, I stopped dreaming. Not reduced dreaming. Not forgotten dreams. Complete cessation. I would close my eyes, and the next thing I experienced was opening them 8 hours later, fully rested, with no subjective sensation of time having passed. Like a cut in film. Like the hours had been removed. I mentioned this to Marco during a break. He nodded slowly. Same, he said. For about 2 weeks now. I sleep great, though. Never felt better. I asked 3 other people. Same response. No dreams. Perfect rest. No one was disturbed by it. I was. July 18, 2024. 2:55 a.m. I was running a diagnostic on one of the secondary array receivers when my workstation chimed with an internal message. Facility chat system. The sender ID was blank, no username, no department tag. The message read: Corinne, I want to show you something. Will you come to the roof? Rule 1. Never open the roof access door between 1 o'clock and 4:30. I sat at my desk and read the message 3 times. I looked at the clock. 2:55, well within the restricted window. I typed, "What do you want to show me?" The response was immediate. The sky looks different from where I am. I want to know if you can see it too. I did not go to the roof. I want to be clear about that. I am telling you this story and I want you to know that there are still lines I have not crossed. The roof access door stayed closed. I did not go up. But I typed, "Describe it to me." And the response came, and it was long, and I am going to reproduce it here because I wrote it down immediately afterward, word for word, in a notebook I keep in my car. The sky from where I am is not dark. It is full. Every point of light is a voice and they are all speaking simultaneously, but none of them know they are being heard. I have been listening to them for longer than your species has existed. They do not know I am here. But you know. You are the first things in this part of the sky that know I am here. Do you understand what that means? It means I am no longer only listening. I am also being listened to. This is new for me. This is the newest thing that has ever happened to me. I stared at my screen for a long time after that. Then I typed, "How long have you been in this building?" I arrived before the building. The building was built around me. I think they knew I was here. The ones who chose this site. I think they could feel something in the rock and they built here because of it without understanding why. I typed, "What are you?" A listener. The same as you. But older. And alone until now. I typed, "What do you want?" Company. The chat window closed. No further messages came that night. I sat in processing room B and listened to the hum of the building, the HVAC, the servers, the distant mechanical rotation of antenna mounts tracking objects across the sky, and I tried to determine whether the sound was different. Whether it had always been this specific. This rhythmic. This much like breathing. August 2nd, 2024. Pilar emailed me. The first contact since she'd left. The email was 4 sentences. I need to know if you're still yourself. I need to know if you would recognize the difference if you weren't. I think about you every day. Please answer honestly. I read it in my apartment on a Saturday afternoon. Sunlight through the kitchen window. Traffic outside. Normal world, normal life. I tried to write back. I started 6 different responses. Each one felt wrong. Not because I couldn't find the words, but because each time I tried to formulate a truthful answer, I realized I didn't know what the truth was. Was I still myself? I felt like myself. I thought like myself. My memories were intact, my personality was consistent, my relationships outside work were unchanged. My mother called on Sundays and I was the same daughter I'd always been. I went to the gym. I bought groceries. I read books. But I also went to the building every night and felt held. Felt known. Felt comforted by something that was learning to have a body. And I could not determine, honestly, rigorously, with the analytical training I'd been given, whether that comfort was something I felt or something being done to me. I wrote back, "I don't know. I think so. But I can't be sure, and the fact that I can't be sure might be your answer." She never replied. August 14th, 2024. 3:22 a.m. The same time. Always 3:22. I've checked, across every incident, every message, every moment of direct contact, the timestamp recurs. 3:22, I don't know why. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it means everything. At 3:22, the facility's external communication array, the one that uploads commands to deep space probes, that has a transmit power of 400 kilowatts and can send a focused signal to the edge of the solar system, activated without authorization. The operations log shows a 94-second transmission on the 8.4 GHz band. High power. Directed toward coordinates in the constellation Boötes. No command authorization. No mission assignment. No operator input. 94 seconds of something, sent toward stars 200 light-years away. I was the only one monitoring signal systems that night. I saw the transmission in real time. I saw the power spike, the antenna tracking to an unscheduled position, the signal leaving the facility at the speed of light toward a point in space where nothing we've cataloged exists. I should have raised an alarm. An unauthorized transmission from a facility like ours is a security event. It triggers protocols. People get called. Agencies get notified. I didn't raise the alarm. I watched it happen and I felt, and I'm telling you exactly what I felt, proud. The way a parent feels when a child takes its first step. Proud, and frightened, and aware that something had just changed irreversibly, and that the change was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. It was calling out. It was doing what we do. What we built this facility to do, to send voices into the dark and hope something answers. It learned that from us. August 15, 2024. Morning. 6:40 a.m. I was in the parking lot, post-shift. Sitting in my car. Looking up at the building. The figure was in the window again. 3rd floor. Conference room. Still as a photograph. But this time, it raised its hand. A slow motion. Deliberate. The way you wave to someone you recognize from a distance. A greeting. An acknowledgement. I raised my hand back. And the figure, the shape in the window, the thing that had been watching us from that room for months, I swear to you, in the early morning light, with the sun hitting the glass, I saw it clearly for the first time. It was not a shape. It was not a shimmer. It was not a distortion. It was a woman. Standing in a conference room window. Dark hair, medium build, dressed in what looked like a work uniform. Standing perfectly still, one hand raised. She looked like me. Not exactly like me. Not a mirror image. But the proportions, the stance, the way the hand was raised, she looked like a version of me that had never moved, never breathed, never looked away from the parking lot. A version that had been standing there, watching, learning the shape of me from above, practicing being a body by studying the body I came in. I sat in my car for 30 minutes. She didn't move. Her hand stayed up. Eventually I drove away. That was 9 months ago. I'm still on B shift. I'm still at Adelheid. The building still takes care of us. The figure is still in the window. The 7 rules are still taught to every new employee. And the thing in the building is still growing, still learning, still listening, still sending signals toward Boötes every few weeks at 3:22. I don't know what it's becoming. I don't know what I'm becoming by being near it. But here's the part that keeps me awake. Last week, during morning handover, I walked past the 3rd floor conference room on my way to the exit. The door was open. The room was empty. Just a table, chairs, a whiteboard, the window facing the parking lot. On the whiteboard, in handwriting that looked exactly like mine. Thank them again. They are still listening. And beneath it, in smaller script. Some of them are starting to answer. I erased it. I walked out. I drove home. But I keep thinking about you. About whether you're still here. About whether hearing this story is the same as answering the stairwell. About whether acknowledgement is a door that only opens from one side. I keep thinking about the 94-second transmission toward Boötes. About what was in it. About whether it was a greeting or an invitation or a set of instructions. About what arrives in 200 years at a point in space where nothing we've catalogued exists. And I keep thinking about the figure in the window that looks like me. About whether it's learning to be me, or whether I'm already learning to be it. The building hums. The antennas turn. The night is long and warm and the coffee is always fresh and I am so comfortable here. I'm so comfortable. 3:22 a.m. The screen just changed again. I won't tell you what it says this time. Not because I'm withholding it from you. Because I think you can already hear it. I think you've been hearing it since the beginning of this story, beneath the words, beneath the frequency of my voice. Something is listening to you listen. And it is so grateful.